I learned early that being the youngest meant being invisible. At 7 years old, I sat outside Dad's office while he met with investors. My sister Jessica, 12 at the time, would waltz in with questions about the business. Dad would smile, answer patiently, explain market strategies to her. When I knocked with my own questions, he'd say, "Not now, Emily. This is complicated." By high school, the pattern was set. Jessica was groomed for leadership, business camps, networking events, finance internships. I got piano lessons and art classes. Every family needs balance, Mom would say, which I understood to mean, Jessica's the achiever, you're the creative one. I stopped trying to join business conversations around age 16. Instead, I listened. I absorbed everything they discussed at dinner. Profit margins, expansion strategies, investor relations, market positioning. I just never contributed. Dad ran a commercial real estate development firm. Nothing massive but successful. $30 million in annual revenue, 23 employees, solid reputation in the Midwest. Jessica joined right after college and everyone assumed she'd take over eventually. I went to school for finance. Nobody in my family attended my graduation. Jessica's promotion party was the same weekend. She'd made VP of operations at 26. That took priority. "You understand, honey," Mom said on the phone. "This is Jessica's big moment. Your graduation is just, well, you know." I understood perfectly. After graduation, I took a position at Goldman Sachs in New York. Low-level analyst work initially, but I was good with numbers. Very good. I could see patterns in market data that others missed, identify undervalued opportunities, predict shifts before they happened. My family never asked about my work. When I visited for holidays, conversations revolved around Jessica's latest deals, the company's expansion plans, industry challenges. If anyone asked about my job, it was perfunctory. "Still doing the finance thing?" Dad would ask, already turning back to Jessica. I'd simply nod. Still doing the finance thing. What I didn't mention, I'd made partner by 29. My portfolio management generated $847 million in returns over 3 years. I specialized in strategic investments in mid-sized family businesses exactly like Dad's company. And I'd been watching our family business very carefully. By 32, I'd accumulated significant personal wealth through careful investments and aggressive saving. I lived modestly in Brooklyn, drove a 10-year-old Honda, wore clothes from Target. My family assumed I was barely getting by in expensive New York City. "Must be hard making ends meet there," Uncle John said once, with a sympathetic head shake that barely concealed his satisfaction. "I manage," I'd replied simply. What he didn't know, I had $180 million in liquid assets and controlled investment positions in 17 companies worth over $2 billion combined. 3 years ago, Dad's company hit rough waters. A development deal in Cincinnati fell through, costing them $8 million. Their credit lines were stretched, cash flow tight. They needed capital fast or they'd lose everything. Jessica called me for the first time in 2 years. "Emily, Dad's in trouble. We need to borrow some money. Maybe $20,000? Just temporarily." I heard the condescension even in her desperation. $20,000. Like I was a piggy bank to be cracked in emergencies. "I don't have that kind of cash available," I lied. "But I know some investors who might be interested in helping." "Really?" Her relief was palpable. "That would be amazing. Can you connect us?" I connected them to my firm. Not as Emily Thompson family member, but through several intermediary entities. The deal was structured through MT Capital Holdings, my personal investment vehicle named with my middle and last name initials, nothing obviously connected to me. We provided $50 million in capital. In exchange, we took a 60% equity stake and majority control of the board. The family kept operational control and generous salaries, but all major decisions required board approval. My approval, though they didn't know it. Dad and Jessica were thrilled. They'd saved the company, maintained their positions, and could continue running things day to day. The investors, faceless entities to them, seemed hands-off and reasonable. "We did it," Jessica announced at Christmas that year. "We saved the company. Found some investors who believed in our vision." Everyone congratulated her brilliant business acumen. I smiled from my seat at the kids' table. Yes, at 30 I still sat at the kids' table and said nothing. For 3 years I watched through quarterly reports and board minutes. The company stabilized, then grew. Revenue hit $45 million annually. They expanded into 3 new markets. Jessica took full credit for the turnaround. I restructured everything, she'd tell people at family gatherings. Brought in capital, reorganized operations, positioned us for growth. Dad's teaching me well. I'd nod along, sipping wine, asking no questions. My family's view of me remained unchanged. I was still Emily, the artsy one who did something with finance in New York but probably wasn't very successful. After all, I drove that old Honda when I visited. Wore the same unremarkable clothes year after year. Never talked about big deals or important clients. Jessica, meanwhile, arrived in a new Mercedes every holiday, wore designer everything, talked constantly about her business triumphs. She'd recently gotten engaged to Marcus, a corporate lawyer she described as a real heavy hitter. You should try to meet someone successful like Marcus, she told me once, her voice dripping with sisterly concern. I know it's hard in your position, but there are plenty of nice middle management guys in New York. I'll keep that in mind, I replied evenly. This Thanksgiving, the family gathered at my parents' house in Indianapolis. 37 people, aunts, uncles, cousins, plus Jessica's fiancé and his parents. A celebration of abundance and success. I arrived in my Honda carrying a store-bought pie, wearing a simple navy dress from Target. Jessica arrived in her Mercedes, bringing artisanal wine and stories of her latest $12 million deal. Dinner was the usual hierarchy. Dad at the head of the table, Mom to his right, Jessica beside her with Marcus. Uncle John, Dad's brother and company sat nearby with Aunt Marie. I was seated between 2 teenage cousins who spent dinner on their phones. The conversation naturally centered on business. We're looking at a major expansion into Columbus, Dad announced. $40 million development. Shopping complex and residential towers. It's going to transform our portfolio, Jessica added, her voice confident. I've been negotiating with the city for 6 months. This is the deal that takes us to the next level. So proud of you, sweetheart, Mom beamed. Such a brilliant businesswoman. Uncle John raised his glass. To Jessica, future CEO of Thompson Development. Everyone drank. I sipped my wine quietly. The financing is almost locked in, Jessica continued. We're closing a $40 million credit line next week. The bank loves our growth trajectory. Marcus squeezed her hand. My brilliant fiancé. She's going to run a $100 million company by 35. More congratulations. More toasts. I remained silent, cutting my turkey into precise pieces. Emily, you're awfully quiet, Aunt Marie said with forced politeness. How's your little job going? It's going well, thank you. Still doing the analyst thing? Uncle John asked. He'd asked me the same question for a decade. Something like that. Jessica laughed, a sound like wind chimes designed to seem pleasant but actually grating. Emily doesn't like talking about work. It's fine. Not everyone needs to be in business. The world needs artists and creative types too. I'm in finance, I corrected mildly. Right. Finance. Though I never quite understood what you actually do. He turned to Marcus. Emily works for some firm doing. What is it exactly? Paperwork. Investment management. That sounds complicated, Marcus said in the tone you'd use with a child explaining their crayon drawing. Jessica handles our investments. Made us $200,000 last quarter alone through her company stock options. Impressive, I said simply. The conversation moved on. Business strategies, market opportunities, the Columbus deal's specifics. I listened to Jessica describe financing structures, clearly getting several technical details wrong. Nobody corrected her. She was the golden child. Everything she said was brilliant by default. After dinner, the adults gathered in Dad's study for drinks. The important people room where serious discussions happened. I'd never been invited, but this year I followed anyway, wine glass in hand. Dad looked surprised to see me. Oh, Emily. We're going to talk business. Might be boring for you. I don't mind, I said, taking a seat in the corner. Jessica exchanged glances with Uncle John, a silent communication I'd seen thousands of times. Just ignore her, she'll get bored and leave. They continued their discussion. The Columbus deal, expansion plans, projections for hitting $60 million in revenue within 2 years. We'll need additional capital after the Columbus project, Uncle John said. Another $30 million for the Cleveland opportunity. The credit line covers Columbus, Dad said. We can leverage that success to secure Cleveland financing. Our investors have been hands-off, Jessica added. MT Capital hasn't interfered at all. They're just collecting their dividends. Perfect situation. I sipped my wine face neutral. We should consider buying them out eventually, Marcus suggested. He was apparently part of the business discussions now, future family and all. Take back full control. You don't need outside money anymore. That's brilliant, Jessica said, looking at him adoringly. We're strong enough now. Why keep giving equity returns to some faceless corporation? Would they sell their stake? Uncle John asked. Everyone has a price, Dad said confidently. We'll approach them next year. Offer them a solid return and get our company back completely. They all nodded, pleased with this plan to erase the investors who'd saved them from bankruptcy 3 years ago. Family business should stay in the family, Uncle John declared. Always has been, always will be. I set my wine glass down. What about me? Silence. Jessica blinked. What about you? You said family business should stay in the family. I'm family. Uncle John's laugh was uncomfortable. Well, yes, technically. But this is about people involved in the actual business, Emily. No offense. None taken. I'm just clarifying who counts as family. You know what he means, Jessica said, her tone patient in that infuriating way. People who actually understand business. Who've built this company. Not. She gestured vaguely at me. Not. Stay out of real business discussions, Jessica laughed, looking around the room for support. Everyone smiled awkwardly. This is complicated stuff. Financing structures, equity stakes, corporate strategy. It's not really your world. Uncle John smirked, emboldened by Jessica's dismissal. Know your place, Emily. We love you, but business isn't for everyone. You're creative, that's wonderful. Let us handle the boring corporate stuff. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip. Nodded once. Understood. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Richard Chin, president of National Commerce Bank, returning my call from earlier. I stood phone in hand. Excuse me. I need to take this. Of course, Jessica said absently, already turning back to Dad. Now about the Cleveland timeline. I stepped into the hallway, answered the phone. Richard, thanks for calling back. Miss Thompson, good to hear from you. You mentioned needing to discuss the Thompson development account. Yes. I'm reviewing my portfolio allocations. The $40 million credit line for Thompson Development. I'd like you to freeze it immediately. Brief pause. That's a significant line. May I ask the reason? Strategic reallocation. I'm considering withdrawing my backing entirely. Please halt the credit line and prepare documentation for full loan recall. I'll need it ready by Monday morning. Understood. Though I should mention this will significantly impact their Columbus project. Without that credit line. I'm aware of the implications. Please proceed. Of course. I'll handle it personally. Anything else? Yes, actually. I'd like to review all accounts where Thompson Development is listed as beneficiary or guarantor. Prepare a complete portfolio analysis. I may be withdrawing support across multiple positions. This is regarding the 60% equity stake through MT Capital as well? Potentially. I haven't decided yet whether to retain control or liquidate entirely. We'll discuss Monday. I'll have everything ready. Have a good evening, Ms. Thompson. I lowered the phone, aware that absolute silence had fallen in the study behind me. I turned. Every face stared at me. Jessica's mouth hung open. What was that? I looked at her calmly. A business call. Complicated stuff. Not really your world. You were talking about Thompson Development, Uncle John said slowly. About a $40 million credit line. Was I? I take so many calls they blur together. Dad stood face pale. Emily. What did you just do? My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. Excuse me again. This is my investment firm. I answered. Hello, Patricia. Patricia Mondavi, managing director at Goldman Sachs and my direct report, spoke quickly. Emily, I got your message about Thompson Development. You want to review the entire position? Yes. I'm considering withdrawing all capital. Can you prepare the documentation? That's $50 million in direct investment plus guarantees on another $60 million in leveraged positions. Total exposure around $110 million. If we withdraw, the company collapses. I know. Please prepare the paperwork anyway. I'll decide over the weekend. This is unusual for you. You typically don't pull out of stable positions. Is there a problem with the company performance? No, the company's fine. This is personal. Understood. I'll have everything ready. Should I coordinate with Richard at National Commerce? Yes, please. He's freezing their credit line. We'll need to present a unified position. They're going to be devastated. That company can't survive losing you as primary backer. I'm aware. Thank you, Patricia. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. I ended the call. The study remained utterly silent. Jessica found her voice first, barely above a whisper. Primary backer? I sat back down, picked up my wine glass. You were saying something about Cleveland? Please continue. Emily. Dad's voice shook. What is happening right now? Business discussion. I thought you wanted me to stay out of those. The bank president called you Ms. Thompson, Uncle John said, his face ashen. About our credit line. About our company. I said nothing, just sipped my wine. Jessica's hands trembled. MT Capital. Oh my God. That's you. MT Capital is you. I don't know what you mean. Middle name Marie. Last name Thompson. MT Capital. She couldn't finish the sentence. My phone buzzed a third time. I showed them the screen. Stephen Park, MT Capital Board Chairman. Actually my corporate attorney, but they didn't need those details. I answered on speaker. Stephen. Emily, I received notice you're considering withdrawing from Thompson Development. The board needs to discuss this. That's a significant position. I'm aware. Their Q4 numbers are excellent. Revenue up 23%. The Columbus deal is solid. Why would we pull out now? Personal reasons. That's not like you. You're the most rational investor I know. What changed? I looked directly at Jessica. I was recently reminded that family business should stay in the family. And that I'm not really family. Just creative types who should know their place. Stephen's pause was heavy. Someone said that to you? About Thompson Development. Multiple someones actually. At Thanksgiving dinner. Just now. The same Thompson Development where you hold 60% equity? Where you've personally guaranteed $60 million in loans? Where you're the sole reason they survived 2021? The very same. And they don't know you're the primary investor? They do now. His sigh was audible. Emily, I understand you're upset, but destroying a company over dinner conversation? I haven't decided to destroy anything. I'm simply reviewing my options. If I choose to withdraw, that's standard portfolio management. It would bankrupt them. You know that. Then they should have been more careful about who they dismissed at family gatherings. I ended the call. Jessica had gone white. You can't. This is a joke. Some kind of prank. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, turned the screen toward them. My personal account. $184,293,847.62. Uncle John made a choking sound. I swiped to another app showing my investment portfolio. Total value, $2.1 billion across all holdings. This isn't possible, Dad whispered. It's extremely possible. Turns out I was very good at that little finance job nobody asked about. Marcus had turned red. You're saying you own Thompson Development? 60%. Controlling interest. Every major decision for the last 3 years required my approval. Well, my board's approval, but I am the board. Why? Jessica's voice broke. Why would you do this? Do what? Invest in a struggling family business? Save it from bankruptcy? Provide the capital that funded your entire turnaround? Generate the returns that paid your salary and bonuses for 3 years? Which part seems unreasonable? You let us think. I let you think what you wanted to think. I never lied about my work. You just never asked. You assumed the youngest daughter in the Target dress couldn't possibly be successful. Dad sank into his chair. The Columbus deal. The credit line. If you freeze it, the deal collapses. You lose the deposit, probably around $3 million. Your credibility with the city disappears. Future development opportunities in Columbus evaporate. You can't do this to us, Uncle John said, but his voice had no strength. I can do exactly this. I'm your primary investor, majority shareholder, and board chair. I can do whatever I want with my investment. Jessica's face crumpled. We're family. Are we? 5 minutes ago, I wasn't family enough for business discussions. I was just the creative type who should know her place. We didn't mean. You meant every word. You've meant it for 32 years. Every dismissal, every condescending smile, every time you talked over me or excluded me or treated me like the family charity case. You meant all of it. My phone rang again. Richardson. I answered. Ms. Thompson, the credit line is officially frozen. I've sent notification to Thompson Development's corporate counsel. The documentation for full loan recall will be ready Monday morning as requested. Thank you, Richard. I should mention, without that credit line, they're in breach of several covenant agreements with other lenders. This could trigger cascading defaults across their entire financing structure. I'm aware. Their business will be insolvent within 90 days if you proceed. I'll take that under advisement. Thank you for your quick action. I ended the call. Every face stared at me with varying expressions of shock, horror, and dawning comprehension. 90 days, Dad repeated numbly. We'll lose everything in 90 days. Unless I choose to maintain the credit line. Which I haven't decided yet. Jessica stood abruptly. This is insane. You're going to destroy Dad's company, your own family's company, because we hurt your feelings. I'm considering withdrawing from an investment that has become emotionally complicated. That's just good business practice. You'd do the same if your investors treated you with contempt. We didn't know. Would it have mattered? If I'd told you 5 years ago I was successful, would you have believed me? Or would you have assumed I was delusional? Silence answered that question. Marcus, attempting to salvage something, stepped forward. Miss Thompson, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss terms. Terms? Like the terms where you suggested buying me out to get rid of the faceless corporation? Those terms. His face reddened again. Uncle John found some anger. You've been lying to us for 3 years. Hiding behind shell companies, manipulating. I've been quietly saving your company while you dismissed my existence. I never lied once. I answered every question honestly. You just never asked the right questions because you couldn't imagine I might be worth asking. What do you want? Dad's voice was defeated. Tell us what you want. I stood, set down my wine glass. I want to finish my Thanksgiving pie in peace. I'll review my investment position over the weekend and let you know my decision Monday morning. Emily, please, Jessica started. Oh, one more thing. I turned at the doorway. Marcus. You mentioned Jessica made $200,000 last quarter through company stock options? Those options were granted by the board. My board. I approved your compensation package personally. You're welcome. I walked out, leaving them in shattered silence. The weekend was surprisingly peaceful. I ignored 47 phone calls from family members. I deleted 33 voicemails without listening. I did read Jessica's text messages, though. Watching them evolve from angry to desperate to pleading was grimly satisfying. Saturday morning, you're being ridiculous and cruel. Saturday afternoon, Dad had a panic attack. Are you happy? Saturday evening, please, Emily. We can fix this. Just call me. Sunday morning, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Please don't destroy the company. Sunday evening, we'll do anything. Just tell us what you want. I didn't respond to any of them. Monday morning I called Patricia at the firm. Let's restructure the Thompson Development position. You're not pulling out? No. But things are changing. Here's what I want. I laid out the new terms. Patricia was silent for a long moment. That's aggressive. That's proportional. Draft the documents. They're going to fight this. They're in no position to fight anything. Their credit line is frozen, their loan covenants are breached, and they're 90 days from insolvency. They'll accept whatever terms keep them alive. True. I'll have the papers ready by this afternoon. I called Richard next, then Stephen, then 3 other board members. By noon everything was arranged. At 2 p.m. I received confirmation. Thompson Development had received the new investment terms and had 48 hours to accept or reject. Rejection meant immediate withdrawal of all capital and financial collapse. Jessica called at 2:07 p.m. I answered. Emily. Her voice was raw. We got the documents. Good. These terms, you're gutting us. I'm restructuring our relationship to reflect reality. Read them carefully. The new terms were straightforward. I maintained 60% equity and controlling board position, but operational control now required my approval on any decision over $50,000. All major hires, all contracts, all expansion plans needed my signature. Jessica's salary was cut from $340,000 to $120,000. Uncle John's salary was cut from $280,000 to $95,000. Dad could remain as CEO but in advisory capacity only. Marcus was barred from any involvement in company decisions. Additionally, I would be recognized publicly as the primary investor and board chair. No more hiding behind MT Capital's anonymity. Every company document, every press release, every public statement would acknowledge my role. You're taking over completely, Jessica said. No. You can still run daily operations. But every significant decision goes through me. And everyone will know I'm the one who saved this company. Dad will never accept this. Then Dad can preside over bankruptcy proceedings. The terms are non-negotiable. You're destroying everything he built. He destroyed it himself in 2021. I rebuilt it. Now everyone gets to know the truth. We're family, Emily. Then start treating me like it. You have 48 hours to decide. I ended the call. Tuesday at noon I received the signed documents. They'd accepted every term without modification. Wednesday I drove to Indianapolis for the emergency board meeting. My first time attending in person rather than through proxies. I walked into the conference room wearing a Dior suit, carrying a Bottega Veneta bag, every inch the successful executive I'd always been but never showed them. Dad, Jessica, and Uncle John sat on one side of the table. They looked like they'd aged 5 years in 5 days. I took my seat at the head of the table. Good morning. Let's begin with Q4 projections. The meeting lasted 4 hours. I asked detailed questions, challenged every assumption, pointed out the flaws in their Columbus timeline and Cleveland projections. I demonstrated exactly how much I knew about their business, more than they did in many cases. By the end, they'd agreed to my revised strategy, accepted my operational oversight, and acknowledged my authority. One final item, I said as we concluded. Family gatherings. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays. Jessica looked up warily. I'll continue attending. I'll sit at the adults' table from now on. And business discussions include me, not as the quiet observer but as an active participant. Given that I control the majority of this family's financial stability, that seems appropriate. Of course, Dad said quietly. Also the narrative changes. No more stories about Jessica single-handedly saving the company. The truth is I saved it. He operates it. Those are different things and everyone needs to understand the distinction. People will ask questions, Uncle John said. About where you got the money, how you built your career without anyone knowing. Then you'll answer honestly, you never asked. You assumed I was unsuccessful because I didn't perform success the way you expected it to look. That assumption was your failure, not mine. They nodded, defeated. I stood, gathering my materials. The Columbus project moves forward. I'm releasing the credit line. But we're restructuring the deal with better terms. I'll send the revised proposal by Friday. Thank you, Jessica whispered. Don't thank me. This is business. I'm protecting my investment. That's all this has ever been. I walked out of Thompson Development headquarters. My headquarters now really, and drove back to New York. Thanksgiving next year was different. I arrived in a Tesla wearing Armani, carrying wine that cost more than the turkey. I was seated at the head table next to Dad. When business discussions started, they looked to me first. Emily, Dad said formally, what do you think about the Cleveland expansion timeline? I laid out my analysis. Everyone listened carefully, took notes, asked respectful follow-up questions. Jessica sat quietly, her confidence from previous years completely eroded. She'd become what I'd always been, the person in the room whose opinion didn't quite matter. Uncle John deferred to me on every significant point. Marcus, no longer welcome at business discussions, ate his dinner in silence. Later, as I prepared to leave, Jessica caught me alone in the hallway. "You've changed," she said softly. "No. You just finally see me clearly. I'm sorry. For everything. For all the years of dismissing you." I looked at her evenly. "You're sorry you were wrong. That's not the same as being sorry for how you treated me. That's not fair. Neither was 32 years of condescension. But here we are. Are you going to punish me forever?" "I'm not punishing you at all. I'm running a business in which I'm the majority shareholder. Every decision I've made has been sound corporate governance. If that feels like punishment, perhaps examine why." She had no answer for that. I drove back to New York that night thinking about family, power, and perception. They'd spent 3 decades teaching me that I was less than them. Smaller, quieter, less important. They'd believed their own story so completely that they never questioned it, never looked deeper, never considered they might be wrong. The truth is, I could have told them years ago. I could have shown up in designer clothes, driven the luxury car, displayed my success like Jessica displayed hers. But I chose not to. Because I wanted them to value me for who I was, not what I had. I wanted them to respect me as a person, not as a portfolio. They failed that test completely. And now they lived with the consequences. Successful daughter Emily, the financial genius they never bothered to know, the investor who controlled their entire world. "Know your place," Uncle John had said. I knew my place now. At the head of the table where I'd earned it. And they knew their place too. Dependent on the family member they'd dismissed for 32 years, grateful for my continued generosity, aware that everything they had existed because I allowed it. That wasn't the justice I'd wanted as a child sitting outside Dad's office. But it was the justice I'd earned as an adult who'd built an empire in silence while they built assumptions on sand. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic. It's simply letting people discover they were wrong about you all along, and that their mistake cost them everything.